was in my room working, and a guide came to me and said, "John, you better come to the church quickly." And I came to the church, and it was empty except for two people. One person was up by the communion table, and one was by the font, youngish people. And the woman was by the font and the man was by the communion table. The woman said to me as I come in, "Ah, good. You are going to marry me to the devil tonight." So I thought, okay, how do we handle this? Well, what happened was that these were a couple of people who had been in the psychiatric hospital in Lochilphead. And they'd signed themselves out. I don't quite know how they'd managed that. And they'd got onto the bus and the boat, and they'd come here. Now this is the end of the road. They terrorised the whole place, and they eventually they trapped the coffee house manager in her room and wouldn't let her out until she brought out all her dresses and let them try them on. And we didn't know how to deal with this at all. Anyway, the end of the story was when the woman eventually decided that she would walk home across the water and set off walking from the jetty. And by the grace of God, Charlie McPhail, who was the postmaster, saw her and got his boat out and rowed out and picked her up and brought her home, brought her back, and we got her back into an ambulance over to Lochilphead. And the guy just disappeared, just went away. That was all that happened at that point. And I thought, we all thought, phew, thank goodness they've gone, because they were here for a week. 2 years later, I'm in my office, and a guy comes and says, "John, there's a couple with a baby want to see you." Came down to the cloisters, and here they were, sane and in their right minds with a baby. "We just came to thank you for all you did for us on Iona." Now, what had we done? Nothing. We had panicked. We had run around like headless chicken. We were terrified. We didn't know what we were doing. To them, it was wonderful. And they, you know, now that's a sort of little cameo. You just don't know what you do. You just don't know. Remember, we love the weekend groups because they're usually from very poor parishes. They were usually just so amazed to be here. They'd never seen anything like this before in their lives. And didn't matter what the weather was like, they just enjoyed it and had a great time. Arrived on a Saturday, went out for a big walk on Saturday afternoon, had a ceilidh on Saturday night, the service on Sunday morning, a wee talk about the Iona Community on Sunday afternoon, Monday morning up and away, and that was it.
So people come and they might not know even why they're coming some of the time, but they come.
They do. I mean, they come, as somebody said, looking for peace and quiet, and hopefully they go away looking for peace and justice. Sometimes one of the great things is the different cultures. The best one I think of, what he did was he brought together a group of boys from the Borstal, a group of young people from the psychiatric hospital in Larbert, and a group of kids from the social work department in Glasgow. And they would come here. Now the boys from Larbert, many of them had cerebral palsy. And the boys from Borstal, of course, if they ever saw about the cerebral palsy, they would just pull his leg naturally. So the first week was pretty hard going, because they were all staying together in the youth camp. And it was jolly difficult. But they were here for 2 weeks. And by the second week, they'd begun to get to know each other as individuals. Came to the pilgrimage on the second week. The first week had been a disaster. The second week we came to the pilgrimage. We're all gathered outside the Martyrs' Cross waiting for the people to come down from the youth camp. down from the youth camp came the group. Borstal boys had made Sudan chairs out of abbey chairs and broomsticks. And on these chairs were carried all the boys with cerebral palsy, strapped into the chairs. And these Borstal boys carried these lads right round the pilgrimage, up Dundee and down to the marble quarry and back, taking turns, howls of laughter, falling, picking them up, carrying on. I mean, you know, it was just so moving.
Yes.
And then at the end of that 2 weeks, we had the final communion service in the Abbey. One of the leaders of the group was a blind social worker. And of course, what did we sing? Once I was blind, now I can see. Amazing Grace, you know. And there were tears in everybody's eye. And at the end of the service, they all went out, and I was going around putting out all the lights. I still do that when I'm up there, by the way. I can't help it. Put out the lights. Come into the darkened cloisters, and I heard somebody somewhere sobbing. And I went up to see who it was. It was one of the Borstal boys. And I thought he was crying because he had to go home the next day, back to Borstal. But he wasn't. And between his sobs he said, I never thought anybody in a church would ever want to shake my hand. But I still can't tell that story without getting a flood in my throat. I never thought anybody in a church would ever want to shake my hand. And then there was the other time when there was a group of really tough kids from Royston in Glasgow in the youth camp. And in the Abbey there was a small group of about 6 teachers who had come away to get a breath. And the first night in the Abbey, the Royston kids were all brought down to the service, and they didn't know how to behave in a church because they'd never been in a church. So they carried on. And it was quite difficult. There's lots of giggling and laughter and things dropped and so on. And the next day, 2 of the teachers came to me. These are teachers from a secondary school in Glasgow, and said they were leaving. We hadn't come to Iona to experience that sort of behaviour in a church. Can you see? Like the a group of divinity students that arrived. And I went out to meet them. And they were all very nice. And I was being my usual sort of, how nice to meet you, welcome to Iona. The last guy to get off was a very handsome looking young guy. And he was smiling away, saying, oh, hello, hello. And I said, well, how nice to see you. Oh, I said, thank you very much, but I can well see why Columba left this place. So I thought, that's a strange thing to say. Anyway, we went up to the Abbey and we sat down, we had our meal, and then I started to explain what the chores were. We call them chores, not tasks. And he's sitting beside me at the top table. I said, I'm not going to, I didn't come to do chores, you know. So that was a Saturday, and he left on the Monday.
Just left?
It's not for me.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But, you know, what do? You just have to say, well, thanks for coming. Maybe see you again.